Recording in progress.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Excellencies, ladies and gentlemen. Indonesia is actively collaborating with various entities, both at national and also global levels, through bilateral and multilateral mechanisms. Through this partnership, Indonesia has developed several scientific activities in the context of food system transformation, including data, modeling, foresight, monitoring and evaluation, as well as policy studies. Indonesia also took part in the convergence that overlaid between food systems transformation agenda with the climate actions. Furthermore, we have aligned the food systems agenda with nutrition initiative. The Free Nutritious Meal Program is one of the national priorities under current administration, with the target of more than 19 million beneficiaries, including under 5 and school children, lactating and pregnant mother. There is an urgency to ensure the planning of this program. The government, together with relations, work together in designing the program, ensuring an effective mechanism, developing monitoring and evaluation mechanisms, and most importantly, ensuring the interventions in the program will fall not only on nutrition fulfillment of the beneficiaries, but also first, improving better diet behavior of the beneficiaries. Second, enhancing the participation of all multi-stakeholders. The third is to enhancing our rural economy as well as farmer welfare and rural cooperatives. Madam Chair.
Thank you so much, Mr. Indatu. I was extremely interested in reading and hearing about the Free Nutritious Meal Program. So I hope when we come to the discussions, you can tell us more about that. Now we will hear from 3 SAC members who have different insights into the work we do within the SAC. The first is Professor Kewsar Afzana, who was already engaged with the UN Food Systems Summit before the first conference in 2021. And Professor Afzana will highlight science-based opportunities to advance nutrition within food systems transformation in Bangladesh. She will emphasize the importance of equitable access to health, the role of nutrition-sensitive policies, and the need to embed nutrition outcomes in policy decisions. Professor Afzana.
Thank you so much, Shakuntola. Good afternoon, everyone. And our common narrative from Bangladesh is that we have actually made remarkable progress in reducing undernutrition, especially for the last 2 to 3 decades. But our the double burden of malnutrition still persists, with rising overweight and obesity, and consequently leading to non-communicable diseases and other morbidities. Micronutrient deficiency, we can observe, is quite prevalent, and many of the deficiencies actually are not measured in the countries. The persistent undernutrition and micronutrient deficiency and NCDs demand urgent transformation in food systems. That most global burden of disease factors are also linked to diets. So healthy diets, safety, nutrition quality, access, and affordability are governed by food systems. So science actually created opportunities for all of us to understand and explore nutrition and food behavior practices and food system transformation. Let me share my own experience while I was in an NGO called BRAC in Bangladesh in designing interventions for promoting healthy diets to address maternal nutrition. While we designed the intervention for maternal nutrition, we did an anthropological study to understand the knowledge and food behavior practices. Unfortunately, as the design of healthy diet counseling was developed based on a technical research with food-based diet combining macro and micronutrients, we did not consider what the reality is. Reality is accessibility, affordability, and availability of the food items and food choice in the community. And our mode of knowledge communications in the communities that we identified pregnant women, we visited house to house, and we counseled them, the family members and pregnant women both, and the months. And interestingly, the study findings were quite convincing for the country and influencing the government to consider this design for addressing maternal nutrition, not the whole design. But the reality is that women cannot afford or access to consume healthy diet. And in Bangladesh, it's actually now the data says 73% people are not able to access healthy diet. So when we design this kind of intervention, we need to also, as a scientist, to better understand and also have a very close communications with the policy and practitioners that how can we design an intervention so that the country could adopt it properly. But the country actually using the maternal nutrition into the government's mainstreaming into the health program, but it's a very expensive program that we actually invested for our designing and doing research on this. So that's one of the lessons from us that what we should be doing. But Bangladesh has very good examples, having numerous nutrition sensitive and specific policies, inclusive policies to foster resilient, equitable, and health promoting food systems. And over the years, Bangladesh invested a lot in crop production, but mostly in the varieties of rice production. We tripled and quadrupled rice production since the 70s. Now, food diversification is a priority in the country. A transforming food system is critical not only to secure food, but also to provide equitable and universal access to healthy diets, to tackle malnutrition and improve health, and save the country from burden of disease and disabilities and the environmental degradation and climate injustice. Investing in science and using evidence for decision makers and planning are not charged by button and science policy that the interface that we are discussing, and we also include the community. And this is very, very important, especially when you design an intervention as a scientist, we always have to have communications with the policy. So there are good examples in the country, and there are good examples in many countries that how the scientists and the policymakers are working together to develop the policies and the designing so that the country could use. But we know that this is important to address also, include that nutrition policies, specific and sensitive policies, and women's empowerment, indigenous youth population, farmers, everything should be inclusive when we talk about it. But sometimes in reality, we have policies, but in practices, we may not see that what we can see in the policies. And Bangladesh being a lower middle income country and home to 180 million populations affected by climate change and other vulnerabilities is struggling to maintain the equity and justice for food security and access to healthy diets. So yes, we need integrated multi-sectoral coordination. We need good governance and accountability, and more importantly, resource allocations are critical to make the change. And then we can see that it's not only within the country, we need to have regional cooperation. We need to have global commitment, because when you talk about climate change, when you see the food insecurity, it's not only the country is responsible, it's the whole world needs to work together to make a change in the country. So I always feel that, food transformation system, we need the global coordination and also the regional cooperation to make it, sustainable. And also for the accountability, we need to all work together. So food transformation system is a must, not only for today, but also for tomorrow. So I'll stop here. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Professor Kewasar, and also for giving us those concrete and exciting examples from Bangladesh. Please note that there's a Bangladesh mission here attending the +4 stock take, and they'll be holding a session tomorrow, and I'm sure they'll be telling much more about the exciting examples that they have for food systems transformation in Bangladesh. But not only that, also how Bangladesh is working as a regional leader within the region and assisting other countries in their food systems transformation. Next, I'll turn to Professor Sheng-In Fan. Professor Sheng-In Fan is a co-chair of the Scientific Advisory Committee, and he will discuss the role of governance to address corporate and economic dynamics that independence transformation. He will highlight some bold actions and alliances that are necessary to tackle systemic inequalities and accelerate sustainable, inclusive governance. Professor Fan?
Well, good afternoon, everybody. So I will highlight 5 guidelines for the country, the national level, to strengthen its governance, to accelerate the process in food system transformation. So number 1 is the country, the nation must develop mechanisms to bring different sectors, agriculture, environment, health, nutrition, together. Otherwise, we'll continue to work in silos. We do have some good examples. For example, in Vietnam, the 2 ministries, the agriculture and environment, has been merged. So you can see these two goals can be pursued at the same time. In my own country, China, they have a very high level, so-called Central Committee on Agriculture. Maybe in the future, they can also bring food systems together to coordinate all the actions, investment, and the policies across different ministries. The second point is about the rights approach. I think this morning, the Secretary General mentioned about accessing to nutritious foods is basically human rights. At the country level, we must translate that into the actions. So for example, we mentioned about the smallholders, the women, the youth, the children must benefit from food system transformation, the rights approach. And then the market, to make sure that, everybody can earn an income to tackle their malnutrition issues for a long time. And here the social protection is also a very important role to make sure that everybody has access to healthy, nutritious foods, and this in short run under the crisis. Here, I think many countries have that good example, including Ethiopia, the rights approach. The third is the decentralization. Yes, I think at the global level, we can discuss here at national level. Yes, it's very important, but it's equally important to decentralize the policy making, to decentralize the empowerment of the food system transformation to local citizens. I particularly wanted to mention that urban consumers, the urban population accounts for more than 50% of the population. In the future, maybe in 5 years, 10 years, could be 60%. How do we empower the urban consumers, urban leaders, including mayors of big cities, to make sure that their food procurement system, their designing or landscaping of cities do take into consideration of the food. The number 4 is about the data evidence, and here, the AI can help to bring the data, bring the evidence to our citizens. So, for example, here in Africa, the African peer-reviewed mechanism supported by CAADP, Comprehensive Agricultural Development Program. So every 2 years, the African leaders come together to evaluate, to peer review their progress on food system transformation. Many countries could do that too. So then number 5 is on capacity building. We know that yes, capacity has been weak. We know that for a long time. I think now it's particularly important to make sure that the capacity building has to be for the whole system. So not just production, not just consumption, but also the processing, the even nutrition, the consumption at home. Here, again, I wanted to emphasize the importance of interface between science. I think, of course, I mentioned about science and the society, the interface between science, the policy, the society, that capacity is foresight is particularly important. I think Jim Woodhill is here. Then he has done the foresight exercise. Now, finally, investment. I think investment is one of the key pillars of this summit. So we need more money. We need more investment. Here, I think in some cases, we do have money. For example, we spent $600 billion on subsidies. How can we repurpose these subsidies to investment, to support of the healthy, nutritious, sustainable food production, even the whole value chain production? I think this is very, very critical. So I want to stop here, and we'll be very happy to hear the feedback, the comments from the stakeholders over here. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Professor Sheng and Fan. And please note that a few weeks ago we held through the SAC a very interesting webinar, which you can find on, which was led by Professor Sheng and Fan, which you can find on the website of the Food Systems Coordination Hub. So please look at that, and you'll get some more of the emphasis that that Sheng and Fan has placed, for example, on local governance and the intersection of local governance and national governance. Our next speaker is Dr. Jean-François Souzanneau. He is also a co-chair of the SAC and at the same time the vice president for International National Research Institute for Agriculture, Food and the Environment. Dr. Souzanneau will focus on environmental challenges within food systems, drawing on the latest to outline science-informed strategies to enhance climate resilience and sustainability, emphasizing the need for coordinated action across sectors to overcome vested sectors. Thank you so much, Dr. Souzanneau.
Thank you, Shakuntala, and good afternoon, everybody. So we have a theme on environment within the SAC, and we released a policy brief which is called Transforming Food Systems to Return Earth. So why Earth limits? Because planetary boundaries are an important concept developed by science to define the safe operating space for humanity on Earth. And these are the limits within which civilization can thrive, because global environmental functions will stay similar to those over the past millennia. Indeed, those planetary boundaries have strong links to the 7 development goals. And science provides evidence that 6 out of the 9 planetary boundaries are being transgressed, suggesting that Earth is already well outside this safe operating space. And it is important to note that the global food system is already a major driver of the transgression of 5 of those boundaries: climate change, biosphere integrity, land use, freshwater use, and also the flows of nitrogen and phosphorus. And if we look forward by 2050, there is hardly any doubt that because of increases in population, changes in diets and income, there will be levels far beyond the planetary boundaries, which will result in significant harm to environment, but also human populations and food systems because of the Earth system changes. And we have to realize that the harm is likely to increase from one generation to the next, unless we can solve the problems. So the trends would result in negative outcomes for food security, biodiversity, water, human health, while exacerbating climate change. So this is why it is so important to work together with nutrition, with food, with agriculture, on how we can solve those food system issues. We have a need for policy coherence, and we need to inform through science by translating the global scientific assessments into actionable knowledge at national and local scales. So let's reflect on where we are in this process. When we look at the dashboard of the UN Food System Coordination Hub, we see that it's only one country that has planetary boundaries in its action plan. But now 30% of all measures that are described in the dashboard concern environment. We see climate resilience, we see water, we see nature positive innovation, agroecology, soil health, agrobiodiversity, and restoring degraded grazing lands, and as well, halting deforestation. So all those issues are really important, and we need to move forward by integrating the issues together. So far, we have measures tackling one issue by one, but in fact, it's the systems view that is needed. This plan initiative that concern knowledge and science include also resource management, agroecology, and they have key areas like advancing research, adopting new technologies, building capacity, strengthening policies and institutions. One area which is making rather rapid progress is about how can we integrate food system transformation with climate action. So this is reflected by the fact that 108 have already included food and agriculture in their nationally determined contributions for the Paris Agreement. And as we have heard from Indonesia and certainly from other countries already in this meeting, the Convergence Initiative works on the alignment of food system transformation with climate action through convergence action blueprints and through convergence dialogues. And there was an interesting FAO report on transforming food and agriculture through a system approach echoes to me the Nexus report of the IPBES and identifies 6 core elements about systems thinking, systems knowledge, systems governance, systems doing, and so on. And when we go through this report, we see how it can help, including environmental contribution in the national pathways. For instance, understanding the environmental interdependencies and trade-offs, promoting the use of data and modeling, supporting cross-sector collaboration, facilitating the forestry, sustainable procurement, fisheries management, reallocating resources, as explained by Schengen already, and enabling adaptive management and evaluation of ecological transition. So we believe that based on such systems approach, we actually call upon decision makers to meet the growing food demand while ensuring the integrity of all the planetary boundaries. And we believe that can offer momentum to all countries to update their national pathways for food systems transformation with a strong science input. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Jean-Francois. Now you have heard from 2 national conveners and from 3 members of the Scientific Advisory Committee. And they have outlined and described very many exciting given examples of how we can work with food systems transformation, but through many different pathways, and how we can work united together and also have the different the different types of work converge and work together to make a stronger transformation of food systems that serve all, leaving no one behind. Many of you here sitting come from different countries with your own examples, and you can ask now, I invite you now to discuss with our 5 presenters and ask questions that you would like to hear if they are more on their work and more they can tell you about the country examples. Thank you. Nicola, you're going to, yeah.
Good afternoon, everyone. So here's a more the interactive part of the session. If you would like to pose any questions or provide examples of your work, feel free. We do have 15 minutes, and that's a nice thing. All the sessions normally we're rushing to the other room. So let's take the opportunity to have a organic dialogue here. I see one hand here. Two there. Okay, we can perhaps.
Thank you. Can you hear me? Okay, thank you. My name is Francisco Rosado Mari. I am a Yucatec Maya, and I'm part of the Indigenous Peoples Food Systems Coalition. I have a question and a comment, if it is possible. My first question is, in the intervention of all the panelists, I could read between lines that they are interested in incorporating indigenous knowledge in the process of transformation. Was there any example that you could elaborate more a little bit on it? If I am correct in assuming that there is some the reading I made, no? And the second part is my comment. We heard in a number of times in their interventions the term science policy interface. And when we deeply think about that concept, it means that the only knowledge that is available to do the interface with policy is science. Many people do not consider indigenous knowledge as science. Some people do, some people don't. But if the truth is that indigenous knowledge is actually not scientific because it has other ways of constructing knowledge, how about using policy interface, using knowledge policy interface, which brings different questions. How to validate that knowledge, but that's a different thing to discuss, you see? But we live at a different dimension by saying knowledge policy interface. Thank you.
Thank you very much for this question. I think take the other side, please.
Yes, good afternoon. My name is Tulu Pindovi from National Planning Commission. I'm a research specialist there. Mine is just to appreciate whether it could be handled as a comment or a question, but I know that issues of coordination are very key. And as much as we talk about that, we can, as countries, we have to set up a proper coordination mechanism. But I just wanted to learn from you that what challenges did you encounter? Because like for Malawi, we face the challenge of having the national convening power. So I heard from the presentation that you have like a setup like in agriculture or something, and you hope that maybe food systems would be incorporated in that particular area. So with that experience, to what extent are you coordinating the players in the food systems space? And the other thing that I wanted to appreciate is that sometimes there is agreeing to what the previous speaker said, there is a gap between what is being researched on and the uptake given to policymakers. Because we can do studies, we can come up maybe with interventions, we'll come up with particular data that states, I heard that there was something about 73%, but are the policymakers or the people that we put in power really willing to accept? And what measures have we really put in place to make sure that the interventions that we are upgraded? Thank you.
Thank you very much. Relevant, super relevant questions. Do we have another? We'll take three. It's always a very risky 5. So I'll do one here and then we do a quick round, please.
Thank you. My name is Makondon. I am from Policy Studies Institute, a researcher at Policy Studies Institute. Two of the presenters actually, they underline the importance of affordability in the implementation of this food system transformation, we can say. One thing in the 90s, in the 80s, 70s, and so on, there was a tendency to store food, and meaning that's a buffer system, where the poor usually access at affordable prices. They buy it during when it's cheaper and then distribute it at a low price to the poor. How is this system working these days? Has it continued, or these kinds of intervention just from policy perspective? Thank you.
Thank you very much. I will give back to the panel. Honorable Dipala, I'm the technical officer. You know, we're a very agile team at the Hub, so we're ready to support whenever needed. So very big pleasure to be with all of you. So the panel, we have three interesting questions here. Of course, the indigenous knowledge very much connects with the science policy society interface, which I think responds a little bit on this issue. Issues of coordination, and of course, a lot of on the gap between what is research, what reaches our policymakers, and finally here on affordability. So I don't know who would like to start from this order here. I don't know if Minister, you have a comment on this, since you did a scientist. I had the honor to visit your country, so I think you have very well placed to have a comment on this, and then I'll give it to her. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Nicole, and thanks to the fellow panelists. And the question, I think, was talking about science interface, and of course, also there was a question of knowledge. And like in the Gambia's context, we have a committee, that is the Agriculture and Natural Resource Coordination Committee, and that is both food and non-food actors that coordinates most of these issues. However, in the indigenous knowledge issue, the country has what we call the Council of Elders or Council of Traditional Chiefs, and these people are highly involved in our project formulation and project implementation. And of recent, our research department, that is National Agricultural Research Institute, they've been fighting against fruit fly, which is especially for the mangoes. And one of the sources for their inspiration has been from the traditional knowledge in the country. And I think these are some of the examples that I can give of the involvement of traditional knowledge in our implementation of our projects and programs. But of course, there was also a mention of affordability in terms of foods. In the Gambia, our National Food Security Corporation has a program of bulk buying, and they do this so that they have a dent on the food prices nationally in the country. But also we have a National Food Reserve program that is just trying to kick off as part of the ECOWAS Food Reserve program. And what this does is to have a lot of food during the harvest season, stock it, food banking, and release it during the lean season so that the prices are managed. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much.
Yes. No, just about indigenous knowledge. Thank you for the question. It is very relevant. More and more, I think, in the international panels we have on biodiversity, like IPBES, but also in IPCC, we do realize the value of indigenous knowledge. This is difficult when you think about a global scale, because indigenous knowledge is obviously anchored in some local situations. And that's where more and more we see the value of place-based innovation that is co-designed with stakeholders that have their knowledge and have this tradition. So thinking about place-based innovation, we call it sometime when there is an input of science, living labs, could be a way to move forward together. Thank you.
Yeah, I just wanted to add a couple of points. One is on indigenous knowledge. Just about 2 months ago, there was in Yunnan, so local knowledge, local practices have helped to protect the biodiversity, help to enhance nutrition, and also help to build the climate resilience. So that local knowledge has been part of the policy making in Yunnan. I think Shakantana, you were there. Now, coordination mechanism, my view is probably that coordination mechanism should come from Prime Minister or even President's office. Aquaculture, I mean, our colleague here from Gambia. So I think if somewhere above the ministry, that coordination will be much more powerful. In the case of China, we have a new sort of Deputy Prime Minister who is in charge of health and agriculture. The first question he asked us is, how can agriculture help to deliver healthy, nutritious food? The natural coordination is already there. Then finally, I think the affordability, yes, absolutely. Here, increasing productivity is still very critical. Then you mentioned about Ethiopia, their social protection schemes, including reserves, strategic reserve is so critical. Unfortunately, for the last several, maybe 1 or 2 decades, the strategic reserve of many countries have declined. We learned a huge lesson. So how can we rebuild the strategic reserve to use that, let's say, well, on the one hand, to provide food to people who are during the crisis, and also help to build a resilience for the long run. So absolutely very critical.
Thank you very much, Professor Chegen. So it's obviously, I know there are many questions here, but we do want to hear from the floor. But maybe very quick, if you could introduce yourself, make your comment, one here and one there, and then we'll have to close. Very extreme, please.
Thanks for this. Fabrice de Klerk with the CGIAR and EAT, Atlantic Commission. So thrilled to have so many commissioners here, and also lead author of the food chapter for the Nexus assessment. So Jean-François, I really appreciate your comment on my lapel. We will be publishing the food system budget of the planetary boundaries this October. But one thing that we found in the Nexus assessment, and Schengen, you've referred to this as well, is that dietary shifts are the biggest single intervention we can make that impact both health and environment. But we continue to think of food-based dietary guidelines as a consumption-based approach. How can we begin to use national food-based dietary guidelines to guide not just consumption, but agricultural policy, trade policy, and subsidies, Schengen, I would include in that, supporting those foods that are currently underconsumed, but which would benefit to health.
Thank you very much. At the end of the...
My name is Faris Mubarak. I'm a cybersecurity and ISO standards specialist. My question is to all the speakers. In many places, science and knowledge has been mentioned. However, I would like some sort of elaboration. What type of technology is being used, in these countries to address, the issues with the food safety and all associated technology has not been mentioned at all. So I would like, the speakers to address, briefly what is being used in terms of technology. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you very much. So very briefly from the panel, I saw a question for you, Jean-François, and if others would like to comment, please, briefly.
Yes, thank you. Thank you, Fabrice, because I think it was more a comment than a question, really. But we are all progressing along the same lines, I think. And this is really getting out of the silos and showing the value of integrated understanding of agriculture, food, nutrition, health, and climate, and environment, biodiversity. This is the way we are all moving, progressing. And I think we have to now suggest that we could help more into the design and implementation of the national pathways by having this dialogue that we have today with the national conveners. It is so important. And so as the SCC, we are looking forward to this perspective. Thank you.
Regarding this food safety issues, I'd like to highlight that what some of the issues we face at the country level, that, we have good policies, but in terms of implementation, as I mentioned, that we always struggle. And we also, we haven't talked, Schengen mentioned about the capacity building. This is really important, that how you develop the capacity, not only the capacity at the top level, it has to be the capacity at the community level, where the loss is happening or where the waste is happening. Because in one of the studies from Bangladesh, when I saw that the food waste is happening, I was quite surprised, because as a person from Bangladesh, I live in there, and we try not to waste any food. We just share whatever we have appropriately cannot use. So that means that we are actually wasting food, and we are not taking it into consideration. The science evidence is there, but we are not taking this into consideration. So we need to develop capacity within the country in terms of not only handling the food safety issues, about knowledge and how we are going to integrate that, implement it. It's really important. And investment, resource allocation in many of the areas, especially in the developing in our countries. So this is one of the things I would like to respond. And I would like to go back to that indigenous knowledge, because in Bangladesh, traditional knowledge as well, indigenous knowledge and traditional knowledge are different. So indigenous communities, they have their own knowledge. I think my colleague from Mexico, he was referring to that. And traditional knowledge also exists in our country. So what I have seen in our food system transformation, I don't have much idea about indigenous knowledge, but I know that traditional knowledge from the farmers are being integrated within our country. And this is really important to understand that what farmers they have been doing. They are resource. I mean, they are like a researchers. They're producing every day different level of knowledge as facing the climate vulnerabilities, this and that. They have their own knowledge. But as the researchers, we need to find out, and we need to take this knowledge to our policymakers and practitioners to integrate it. This is really important. Thank you.
Right. On dietary guidelines, I think today we used to think from farm to fork. Today is other way around. If we decide what we should eat, healthy and nutritious diet, and of course affordable, then derive the production from backward to the whole value chain. Then on technology, yes, indeed, I think different countries must have different type of technologies. So here, we are working between China and Africa to see what sort of technologies from China that can be shared with Africa. I mean, our African Union Commission is here. So I think that has to be tailored to the local conditions, local economy, and affordability of certain technologies. So biotechnology, AI, yes, they are great, but whether the poor countries will be able to afford maybe some of the easy to use, low-hanging fruit technologies, processing, mechanization, or in addition to seed selection, probably will be more in this short run.
Thank you so much for posing the questions and the comments, and thanks to the panelists for giving your views. As I said, the SAC, the Scientific Advisory Committee, informs the hub, the UN Food Systems Coordination Hub. And many of you who are sitting here come from countries and maybe have relations to your national conveners and to your national pathways. It would be good if you can look at the website we have and let them get to know them, build up that link between national pathways, governments, and the SAC members, because there's so much that we can do together. And therefore, I urge you to look at that connection between the SAC members and the countries they come from. All I would like to say is that we as the SAC, we confirm our commitment to the UN Food Systems stock take now, and confirm our commitment going forward to 2030. And I'm sure many of you all will be going forward to beyond 2030. And therefore, we thank you for being here with us today, and thank you for giving us your comments, listening, and looking forward to working together with you as we move forward. Thank you.